Do you think that this is special enough to wear my favorite number? I'm about to spend the day with it and find out.
We're going to start on the surface first.
Imagine the DB11 and the DBS Superleggera had a baby. This, to me, is it. There's so much DNA from both of those vehicles in here, and honestly, it makes it look like a beast, but that you could still totally take it to the opera.
The gaping mouth that looks like it's eating pavement even before it moves comes from the DBS. The DB12 is slung lower than its predecessor. That's a bit of vintage in there, looks like. The hips are wider than on the 11, but they don't take it quite to the extreme of the DBS.
The clamshell hood is gone, which to me is kind of a bummer because I loved that one piece, but they had to get rid of it because of pedestrian safety standards. However, the silhouette looks fairly familiar. Aston apples don't fall very far from the tree, but oh, I still think this is a beautiful car.
Yes, it is a stunner, and I love it. But with its new, more aggressive nature and the Aston moniker of Super Tourer, yes, they're shooting for more of a performance bent on this car. There was something pure GT I loved about the DB11. That was a pure touring car, and this one pushes that boundary toward sports car. But all you have to do is look at the other GTs out there, which are all cruising more into the aggressive direction. I'm thinking especially of the AMG GT lineup or the Bentley Continental and the Ferrari Roma. So when your competitors and customers are headed there, you do too.
As always, the looks are completely subjective, so I am going to let you subject all over the comments.
When it comes to what's under all of this exterior, we're looking at some of the same and some new.
That starts with a crispy 4-liter twin-turbo V8 that makes 671 horsepower, 590 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers are up 34% from the previous generation with the DB11. You guys, also, I'm going to tell you, those power numbers are bigger than they were in the V12. So there's really nothing to complain about here. You want to know some other numbers? You also get 202 miles per hour as a top speed and 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds.
They've managed to squeeze this out by making very Aston modifications to the AMG engine, including larger turbos, increasing cooling, modified cams, and improved compression ratios. And yippee-ki-yay, wow, this thing smokes.
This thing has got guts, chutzpah, balls, gumption, whatever you want to say it, this thing has got it. It also gets a new 8-speed automatic transmission. They needed a new one so it could handle all of that extra torque that we have here. They've also really shortened the shifts as well as kind of given them a little bit, they kind of make the shifts a little bit of an event, but not so much so that they're really distracting. I like how the gear ratios are spread out. I think that the combination of the two is really good.
I'll echo my sentiments about the DB12's looks moving away from the GT world. It's the same with the way the throttle mapping feels. It's aggressive and punchy. Again, rather un-GT-like. No, that's not a negative, but it's just moving away from a smooth operating powerhouse and acting like more of a gut punch. And who knows, Aston is coming out with some new products over the next 18 months, so maybe there's something that will slot between this and the Vantage. Your guess is as good as mine. With all that power to put down, the DB12 gets some new help in the driving dynamics department.
When it comes to what underpins the DB12, there are some similarities to the DB11. About 80% of this car is new, but if you're talking about some of the software and how that affects what is going on, then 100% of the car is new.
They've stiffened up the chassis and made improvements to elements like the engine cross brace, the front cross member, and the bulkhead that's improved lateral stiffness and torsional rigidity. All of those elements add up to being able to fling the DB12 around turns with more fervor. Another reason the nice folks at Aston are going to enable you to do that is because this GT gets an E-diff on the rear for the first time.
So that means you can go from an open diff in the rear to 100% locked back there. Where that's going to help you is with your handling, around turns, with grip. Certainly if you're sort of getting into a little trouble, it will correct. And boy, it really does help when you're trying to control all the power that the DB11 has. This is not a sedate GT cruise in the countryside. This thing is aggressive and means a lot of business.
You also get stiffer anti-roll bars and adaptive dampers that have 500% increase in force distribution. I'd love to say that I got a solid chance to push this car to its limits, or even mine, but it was raining for much of my drive on the super twisty bits in the mountains. Suffice to say, even as I pushed this car as far as conditions allowed, I could feel it encouraging me to do more. It's got a lot to give a driver and will make you feel very secure about driving it hard. When I spoke to Simon Newton, the head of driving dynamics at Aston Martin, he told me that adjusting the dampers was the trickiest part of putting this car together.
They're using really sophisticated dampers from the Bilstein company, and he said that really fine-tuning those dampers in every single different setting was something that they really took a painstaking amount of time with. And you know, for my money, with the things that I'm kind of trying out right now, gosh, I really feel like they've done a really great job. In comfort mode, I feel like it's a very livable driving situation. And then of course you get into sport or sport plus, and it really does ratchet things up a little bit. Things are much firmer, but it's still like if I'm driving over something that's a little bit bumpy, like it just absorbs everything and really just flattens all the imperfections out. So, I mean, I tip my hat to them. I think they did a really great job and strike a really nice balance.
Of course, when you flip it into Sport Plus, things get even sportier and more aggressive, but it doesn't lose its GT feel. It's not sports car rough. This car is quick, but it's still composed and sure-footed when it's doing it.
The steering is really, really precise. I mean, turn in is just like, boop, like the tiniest little input, and you're going where you want to go. The other thing I'm going to talk about is the brakes, because they put carbon ceramic brakes in this thing for the first time. And normally carbon ceramic brakes can get a little bit grabby right up at the top of the pedal, which is a very un-GT-like characteristic. These do not feel like that. They're really steady and they're really sure. They've shortened up the pedal a little bit, so it feels very much more sort of performance-minded, but also like it's still characteristically very much a GT car, even though you have those more powerful brakes to handle the added power that you have with this powertrain.
The DB12 also gets 21-inch wheels wrapped in bespoke Michelin Pilot Sport 5 tires that use compounds unique to Aston Martin. They're the first OEM to use these tires on a production car, and even in the rain, the grip felt really solid. Aston's put together a car that's more aggressive now than assertive and really pushes the GT limit.
So while you're doing all of that fancy driving, I have to say something that's left me a little bit short has been the user interface. They've always used sort of secondhand Mercedes stuff, not anymore. This is all Aston Martin, and you guys, it is so improved. The speed is pretty quick. It's not a terribly layered system, which is really terrific. They do, I think, a really nice combination between touchscreen, yes, touchscreen, I said it, and physical buttons, so all of your main functions are here. They've redesigned this whole part of the center console. They've consolidated some things. You don't have that sort of beautiful, like kind of rainbow push button shift knob. Now it's all done here. I honestly feel like they've done a heck of a job recreating this and making it really modern, but still beautifully classic.
The 10.25-inch touchscreen does slant backwards a tad extremely for me, but for a taller driver, this should not pose a problem. It does integrate with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto wirelessly, and there's wireless charging. You get a great mix of solid metal switchgear and buttons with that touchscreen.
It's also capable of over-the-air updates, which is also a first for Aston Martin. They do have a subscription-based system where you can pay for things like navigation, anti-theft, personal profiles, stuff like that. They'll give you the first 3 years for free, but after that, you're on your own. Honestly, for a car at this price point, I would expect and hope that they would kind of throw all those things in for free, but I guess they had to figure out a way to pay for this somehow.
For those of you thinking, why does she care about the button screen ratio? Well, the customer who's buying this is not a screens-only person, and I think Aston's catered to them perfectly here.
When it comes to craftsmanship of the interior, in my opinion, nobody does it like Aston Martin. Everything in here is done by hand. The materials, I think, are always top-notch. The colors are beautiful. Of course, you can do everything bespoke. If you have a green tennis shoe and you're like, I want it to look like this, they'll do it for you. They might question your taste personally, but they won't judge you. The one thing that I think that they maybe could explore a little bit more is some sustainable materials, but you know, they've talked to their customers and their customers say, we love the Bridge of Weir leather, so here we are. Guys, it's really beautiful.
The seats are all new, and the ones in my car were the sport buckets. Great seat, comfortable and supportive. I actually fell asleep in one for a minute on a windy road and didn't slosh around. Brilliant. There are no sustainable fabric choices, but the Bridge of Weir leather that they use is as sustainable as leathers come. Remember, these cars are built to last for 100 years plus. They're not disposable, and leather is an incredibly durable fabric. Plus, when it looks and feels this beautiful, you stick with it. Some optional bits on the DB12 include metallic paint, carbon fiber details, privacy glass, colored brake calipers, and smoked taillights. Pricing starts around $250,000. And for that, you get a well-rounded car that gives you great power, agility, performance, elegance, and stature. Yes, I'd say that's very worthy of my number 12.
It's new, it's beautiful. It has a new interior, including a UX system, which it desperately needed. You guys, I really wish I were in the market for a luxury performance GT because DB12.